Mars, the red planet. For centuries, humans have looked up at that rusty dot in the sky and dreamed of going there. We've sent rovers, landers, and orbiters. We talk about colonies, terraforming, maybe one day walking on its surface. But here's a question almost nobody asks. Forget humans for a second. If you dropped an ordinary Earth animal onto the surface of Mars right now, today, with no spacesuit and no protection, would anything survive? The answer is stranger and more surprising than you might think. But first, we need to understand exactly what we'd be throwing these animals into. Because Mars isn't just a colder, emptier version of Earth. Mars is a nightmare. Let's go through what would actually kill you there. First, the air. Or rather, the almost complete lack of it. Mars has an atmosphere, but it's incredibly thin, less than 1% the pressure of Earth's. And what little is there is over 95% carbon dioxide. There is essentially no breathable oxygen. For any animal that breathes like we do, this alone is an instant death sentence. Second, the pressure. The atmospheric pressure on Mars is so low that liquid water on the surface would basically boil away instantly, even at freezing temperatures. The low pressure alone would be catastrophic for most living things. Your body fluids would start to vaporize. Third, the cold. Mars is brutally cold. The average temperature is around minus 60 degrees Celsius. On a really cold night near the poles, it can plummet to minus 125. There are warmer days near the equator, occasionally rising above freezing, but overall, Mars is a frozen desert. And fourth, the radiation. Mars has no global magnetic field and barely any atmosphere to shield it, so the surface is constantly bombarded with cosmic rays and solar radiation. Over time, this radiation is deadly to most complex life. So let's be brutally clear. If you put a dog, a cat, a cow, or a human on the surface of Mars unprotected, they would die almost instantly. Suffocation, the pressure, and the cold would kill within moments. So that's the end of the video, right? No animal could possibly survive. Well, not so fast. Because life on Earth includes some absolute freaks of nature, and a few of them are tougher than you can possibly imagine. Let's start with the obvious champion. The one you already suspect, the tardigrade. If you've seen our other videos, you know this little creature. The tardigrade, or water bear, is famous for surviving almost anything. Freezing, boiling, the crushing pressure of the deep sea, massive doses of radiation, and even the raw vacuum of space. In fact, tardigrades have already been sent into space, exposed to the vacuum and solar radiation in orbit, and some of them survived and even reproduced afterward. So Mars seems like a perfect fit, right? Well, partly. Here's the key. A tardigrade survives these extreme conditions by entering that dried-out, shut-down state we talked about, the ton. In this state, it isn't really living an active life. It's essentially suspended, waiting. So a tardigrade in ton form, sitting on the Martian surface, could probably survive for a surprisingly long time, especially shielded from the worst radiation. But it wouldn't be crawling around, eating, or reproducing. It would just be enduring, surviving, but not living. To actually be active, a tardigrade still needs liquid water and a livable environment, and Mars doesn't offer that on its surface. So the tardigrade survives, technically, but as a tiny, sleeping passenger, not a thriving Martian. So who else makes the cut? Let's talk about the real masters of survival. Not animals, but microbes. Certain bacteria are almost unbelievably tough. Take Deinococcus radiodurans, nicknamed Conan the Bacterium. This microbe can survive radiation doses thousands of times higher than what would kill a human. It can repair its own shredded DNA in hours. Scientists consider it one of the most radiation-resistant organisms ever discovered. On Mars, radiation is one of the biggest killers, and this bacterium just laughs at it. Some researchers believe organisms like this could survive just below the Martian surface for extremely long periods. Then there are extremophiles, organisms that thrive in Earth's most hostile places. There are microbes living in acidic hot springs, in the frozen valleys of Antarctica, deep inside rocks, and in environments with almost no water. Some of these closely resemble the conditions found on Mars. In particular, certain microbes that survive in permafrost and dry deserts, like parts of the Atacama, are considered prime candidates for surviving a Martian environment. They're used to extreme cold, extreme dryness, and very little to feed on. There's even a type of lichen, a partnership between fungus and algae, that has shown remarkable resilience. In experiments simulating Martian conditions, some lichens and certain fungi survived and remained metabolically active for a period of time. That's a big deal because it means not just surviving in a frozen sleep, but actually staying biologically functional under Mars-like stress. So let's answer the question properly. Which animals would survive on Mars? Honestly, in the everyday sense of the word animal, the dogs, the cats, the insects, the complex creatures, the answer is essentially none. Not on the surface, not unprotected. Mars would kill them in moments. The tardigrade survives, but only by shutting down into a death-like sleep, more of an endurance than a life. The true survivors of Mars wouldn't be animals at all. They'd be the microscopic extremophiles, the radiation-proof bacteria, the hardy, lichens and fungi. Life so simple and so tough that the very definition of a hostile planet barely applies to it. And maybe that's the most fascinating takeaway of all. When we imagine life on Mars, we picture little green men, or one day, human colonies under glass domes. But the reality is that the first Earth life to truly survive on Mars, and maybe the first life to ever live there at all, won't be us. It'll be the tiny, the simple, and the nearly indestructible. The same kinds of organisms that were here at the dawn of life on Earth. And if humans ever do reach Mars and accidentally bring some of these microbes along, we might, without even meaning to, become the reason life finally takes hold on another world. Not through astronauts, through bacteria. Life, it seems, doesn't need comfort. It doesn't need air, or warmth, or safety. It just needs the smallest possible foothold. And given that, it will find a way to endure, even on a dead, red planet millions of miles from home.